Happy Tuesday, and welcome to the Rama Practice. Direct your attention towards your screen. You'll see the first element, Satsang. Satsang is a scientific method whereby we may obtain peace, light, and love in our life. It requires no physical skill, spiritual accomplishment, or meditation experience to begin its practice. Satsang consists of two words, Sat and Sang. Sat means positive energy, and Sang means to be with or to be in the presence of. Therefore, the word Satsang means to be in the presence of positive energy. The next element is meditation. Meditation is an important part of Satsang. When we meditate, we withdraw consciousness from worldly objects and direct it inwards to focus on a single thought. In doing so, our minds become calm and our thoughts become pure, thereby allowing us to obtain higher states of consciousness, such as enlightenment, peace, light, and love. Inner orientation. There are two types of Satsang, inner Satsang and outer Satsang. An example of outer Satsang would be chanting or attending pilgrimages. When we practice outer Satsang, we have the potential to change our behavior, but only through the practice of inner Satsang can we obtain higher states of consciousness, such as enlightenment, peace, light, and love. The Satsang that you will learn today is an inner Satsang where we meditate in silence. Group session. These practice sessions are structured for group participation. When we meditate as a group, our focus is improved and our personal progress along our spiritual path is expedited. By regularly attending these practice sessions, the benefits of group participation are amplified. Joy and inner happiness. All beings wish to experience joy. Joy is the eternal longing of the soul. But only through the practice of inner Satsang can we obtain a joyous state. Each time we practice Satsang, our inner happiness gradually increases, ultimately culminating in a state of joy, which we experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The agenda for today consists of 3 sessions: the informative session, the practice session, and the interactive session. During the informative session, a lecture will be given about a Satsang topic, the future, or some relevant spiritual topic. During the practice session, you'll receive instructions on how to meditate, followed by a period. You have the opportunity to begin traveling with the mission throughout India, facilitating satsangs. And during that time, he witnessed the positive effects that satsang could have on mankind. And upon arriving to the United States, both he and his wife continued to facilitate satsangs for local satsangees. He has led teams of satsang members in translating important satsang literature into English and has worked tirelessly to make satsang more accessible to Western and English-speaking audiences. He currently travels throughout the United States, India, and England, facilitating satsangs while maintaining his duties as a husband, a father, and an IT executive. Today, he will teach us a rare and ancient form of satsang as taught by Guru Maharaj. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Sanjeev Kumarji.
So happy Tuesday, everyone. Let's, I have been thinking about, in terms of well-being at all three levels, the physical, psychological, and spiritual. To lead a wholesome life, we need all three together. And somehow, we start bottom up and then get stuck somewhere in this process. I think satsang ought to be the way we take a balance. So again, I mean, it's a whole thought process around how do we create this environment as well as a set of behaviors to make this work for us on all three levels. Somehow I feel like satsang should help, but then, hurdles remain. So anyway, let's get into the practice. Let's meditate on this, how we can improve wellness on all levels. So yeah, it is. Get to what we were just talking about. And create this wellness on all three levels. You got to get to this clarity, which is essentially samadhi through dhyan. So we will practice that now. Just sit in a relaxed posture, eyes lightly closed, and feel the presence of this transcendental energy in form of light that's entering our heart, distributing throughout our body, and that we are becoming completely and totally immersed in this light. If mind wanders away, which it will, let's bring it back. And that's another aspect of inward orientation. So mind goes outwards naturally, but the entire time of this meditation, we ought to bring it back inwards. So I'll repeat one more time that sit in a relaxed posture, eyes lightly closed, and feel the presence of this transcendental energy in form of light right here, right now, in front of us, and that this light is entering our heart, distributing throughout our body, and we are becoming one with this light. We're getting totally immersed in it. And if mind wanders away, bring it back. We'll start with music, then music fades away, then we get into deep silent meditation, and then we'll transition out with music again. Let's start now. So happy Tuesday, everyone. We'll probably have a shorter session today. So any thoughts, comments? So Eddie, what's on the surface today?
Well, the topic of food and how we love it, and how we love to satisfy our taste, our desires for tasty foods. But the truth is, you know, from the time we were little children until now, as adults, we hear, frequently the foods that are good for us and the foods that are not good for us and are actually bad for us. And we kind of have this knowledge and we know what it is. We just really don't practice it. And it's true. We talked about the three gunas, rajas, raja, tamas, and sattva. And so the same thing applies to foods.
Mhm.
And the foods we eat get transformed into the material parts of our body. So it's that old saying, what we eat is what we become. We are what we eat. And so we want to eat those foods that are more sattvic, are more, healthier for us, and will aid us in increasing our consciousness, right? Calm our minds and help us achieve higher consciousness. And sattvic foods do that for us. We know that certain foods like salt, we hear is not good for us because it creates high blood pressure. Well, also in theory, and this is probably part of Ayurvedic theory as well, salt is almost the opposite of sattvic food. So it's kind of a negative sattvic food. So it's really bad for you, and it's almost like death. So that's why you always want to have a small amount of salt in your food, and it's just something we learn through living, right? We learn this through experience that salt is not very, very healthy or good for us. But there are foods and so forth that are good for us and that are sattvic, and we should engage in those. And the theory goes is that we talked about the three gunas, but before there are the three gunas, there is, if you can call it, the point from which transcendental light emits. And if you can eat foods associated with that principle, then it will certainly make you a stronger person and build up the life force energy within you and make you more energetic and make you more capable of achieving your goal of joy and happiness in the spiritual sense. And there are foods that do that. And so, I would say if you go back and because India has a long tradition, right? A long history and a tradition of spirituality and so forth. And if you go back and there are other, Greece as well, and other places too that have been around a while. But if you go back and you look at those diets, within those diets are these profound theories about food, that we've lost to this day. But if you go back and look at it, it's in there. And so if you if you eat those diets from that have been around for thousands of years, you'll tend to be a much healthier and happier person. And you won't succumb to the ills that the modern day people that we do now. And that's important because it's part of the process of achieving the ultimate goal of spirituality, that's salvation. Without a healthy body, you just can't do it, right? I mean, it's not possible. And you're here on earth, you're miserable, you're suffering, and you can do yourself no good. You can do anyone else no good as well. So, it's important information. These old diets have so much knowledge in it. maybe, in our spare time, we should take a little time out of our day or our week to study some of these things and put them back into practice, because the truth is that when we look at the packaged foods that we have today, and the meats and things like this, they're very much anti-sattvic foods, and so they don't help us in a sense of you know making ourselves healthier, and making our minds calmer, and helping us achieve high states of consciousness. They actually sort of work against us in that sense. But that's something that we can just study in our own times, and find out more about the type of foods that are good for us, and if we can, put those things into practice, it's for the better. It's a lot to learn. It's a lot to know, but you can always get started.
Yeah, interestingly, so there is a book on devotion by Guru Maharaj, and in the prologue itself, before he gets into it, there is an elaborate discussion about food, not like a minor, like it's like literally a whole chapter on food before he gets into devotion. So and probably it's not a coincidence. It's just so there is that much effect of food on your sadhana or whatever practice you do. And there is. What makes it a little more complicated, when you think about the practical aspects of it, is like sometimes, so if I go back to the scriptures in India, there was this mention of kandamul phal, which is like roots, fruits, and like raw, probably vegetables, and basically, you can't get simpler than that, and that would be sattvic. But because of multiple reasons, that's not a typical person's diet. And today we are in environments where that would be very hard to follow. So Guru Maharaj also gave, and that's what I think makes it fascinating on one hand, but I'm also realizing that having shortcuts and simpler solutions doesn't necessarily take away the responsibility you have. Those risk mitigation or, alternatives are there because when you get stuck with, situations. So what Guru Maharaj said was that before you eat, if you do exactly what you did in our meditation, which is to imbibe this energy, this transcendental energy in the food that you are about to consume. So conceptually itself is like now you are consuming that energy. And hence, whatever it is, what you are processing is the energy. The more stronger you make that thought process, the more real it gets. It's the same way the meditation works. So there is a way out, but again, keeping that level of conviction, doing it consistently and all that in itself is a challenge. But then if that doesn't mean that we we ought to understand the differences, or like, what you are consuming is, you allowing it to get into your system. Why would you allow any, as you mentioned, I mean, there are things like salt, which consumed in, in like in quantities that are, beyond, there is a tipping point and it becomes absolutely, negatively impactful to you. But even if it's in smaller quantities, it can add up. It can have a cumulative effect, and so on and so forth. So what you're eating, you ought to be very, very deliberate and careful about. But these days, it's very, very hard. So what food, how the food is cooked, how it is served, how it is consumed, it's the entire thing. So, and unfortunately, we are slowly giving up the simpler things in life, and that means, the sattvic aspect of, just having simple food is also somewhere getting sidetracked. So Shivangi, what do you think?
Namaste, Bhiyaji. I'm just listening to the discussion. Good discussion.
That doesn't cut it, right? So I was, when I was, talking about wellness, it's like, first, yes, we got to read, we got to listen, but then the second step is to understand and do something about it. Is probably the third step. So yeah, listening is good, but and I'm not saying that you don't do the next two steps. I'm just saying that we ought to think about the implementation. Yeah,
but we are our own worst enemies, right? So even if you are on a good path and you're trying to do all the good things, our mind and lives, everything, it takes over sometimes. So
yeah. So interestingly, the strength, the light, the inner consciousness, higher awareness, higher consciousness, all that is within as well. But then mind overshadows all of that. And how do we overcome that? Sometimes become a lifetime journey. And it shouldn't be. But it is. So I have a question for everyone here. We do these satsang sessions, but I don't know why suddenly I am having multiple questions about, and there is a whole list of things that we ought to have and we should be doing in these sessions and prepare more, better content and so on and so forth. But one question is, there ought to be, and especially folks who have been related to this, in the Indian context, there is like a satsang family, there is a satsang community, there is um, almost like this support system. So I might have asked this before, but is there any thought on how we can take some baby steps or big steps towards creating a more, a community, a family the way it ought to be? So Omkar, I'll start with you. Let me put him on spot.
So, namaste, Bhaiya, namaste, everyone. That is a very difficult question to answer. So, we have been doing this for so long. And so what you are suggesting, probably we can try, and let's do that, try that, define like what would be what we are expecting to happen, and if that does not happen, then we can move to some other option to try.
I lost so what were you suggesting?
No, I was not suggesting. I just said that whatever anyone, because I have shared so many things, but I probably now I am running out of ideas. So whatever actually we are trying to do, that can be any idea from anyone. So we just try that for a certain period of time, and if that works, great. If it does not work, let's try something else, because progress has been very slow, and maybe like because this is something really advanced, and continuing the practice requires like real dedication from the person, and it is very easy to stop doing things. But sorry for moving.
Say the last part again. I missed something here.
So the last part was probably this is very advanced, and it's not easy to comprehend or understand. So like we have to be focused on our approach that is more appealing to everyone and more understandable to people.
So how do we do that?
So recently